Okay, so this is our first one. Already pulled off the cardboard for us. Got us some frozen stuff out of the house to start getting all the food prepped for these guys, and I guess we'll just kind of scoot everything off to the side and see where we stand in here. Unfortunately, yes, you can see the fruit fly cover is slowly winning the day for me. Kind of dig down in here a little bit, see if we can find some of the worms. Nice dry top layer, as you can see. Kind of pulling all that off to the side so we can see what we've been doing in here. So, kind of like to just dig right in here. Ooh, first little reveal. See some large adults here. Down in this lower area, looks like the apple that I put in here is still doing the trick. A lot of that left. It's one of the hidden treasure troves that I like to leave. I undoubtedly picked frozen apples in my composter and ended up with not much left. Just a little bit of ooey gooiness here. See if we can dig out some more, but I'm really not seeing a lot. I've been trying to keep these as a center feed only item, you know. These guys have been really plowing through this central area here, so really enjoying that. Almost been here a month, so not a whole lot of work done, but I can tell that most, if not all, of the paper that was left down in here has already really been broken down. You know, little bits are left, but nothing really. Still some pine needles, you know. We got some very active, decent sized adults that were swimming around. So with that kind of stuff going on, we can really see that these guys are prospering, and the little bit of a half pound that I put in here in the beginning has really taken off. So we're going to give them a couple of pieces of this frozen mushroom chops that I have. Unfortunately, you know, food does go bad, and, you know, instead of sending it to the landfill, I like to reclaim this. And reclaiming this kind of stuff is extremely beneficial. This is going to probably get a nice little tag. I believe this is my single hole, so all of my bins have either a single or a double hole. I will mark this with a little sticker to let it know that I planted fungus in here. Now, in case you're wondering, there's really two types of biodiversified material that you can stick in here. You can stick your, you know, vegetable stuff, your fruit waste, all that kind of stuff in here, and you're going to end up with bacteria growing and eating all that. Well, this right here, because I'm using a higher grain fungus mix in it, just like what's going on with the European night crawlers, I can add extra fungus support via the extra sugars that will come out of this, stale bread. And these extra little pieces of mushroom here like those will help support a very healthy fungus mold in this worm bin. Now, I want to make sure that the worms can get their good, gosh golly stuff out of it, so I really like to make sure my worms get banana, because there's potassium in bananas, along with, about a dozen other great things that will be very beneficial. So there we have that. We've laid out our food source. This is all frozen, so I've more or less sequestered all of the moisture inside of the material. It also broke the material down easier, because as this warms up, it's going to be a slush of multi-goodness, and it will slurry a lot faster, and then it will get nice and warm. If I add a little bit of this coffee and I mix in some of these dead leaves that I had on top, and I add some new leaf layer on top after I cover all this stuff up, now all of these red wigglers are good, I would say, for at least another month. I've got a nice good sized square here. As you can see, what just tumbled out of my hand, chunk of coffee. Like I said, it does really enjoy bulking up and becoming this kind of chunky, gooey aftermath of problems for me. But now what I'll do is I'll wet that coffee down on top. It's already been rotting for a little while. This will help unfreeze that frozen stuff. And then we'll give it a nice cover, and we'll kind of feel through, see if we have any chunks. So like here, I just found the rest of that apple mash, so there it is. I want to make sure, because I know there's a lot of worms on it, that I just put that right back in the same spot. And then I cover it with a good healthy amount of top cover from the surrounding stuff. Now I can mix that back, take this really dry stuff, put it on top, put the wet stuff on top of that. Now I took all that moisture that I have pent up in here, and I just gave it a nice little top cover. See, another chunk. This was actually just some dried out compost, because my compost is always wet, being that I live in the Pacific Northwest. So all we get here is rain. Most people see the sun come out and they react much like vampires. Not that vampires are real, but yeah. So you can see here that I really don't have much of a top surface left. All of the material up here on top here was broken down, and now I don't have a whole lot left, so I'm going to give the worms a reason to come up and pull more down as it breaks down, because that's what I'm trying to do. They come up, I didn't give them a month's worth of food. I gave them maybe 2 weeks worth of food. But they reprocess all of the food so well. You can see I have layers in here that really just can't get covered by the leaf. So I will come through, I will find dry chunks, break it up and wet this stuff down, and we'll give it another covering. So now I could take some of these cardboard runners that I'm trying to break down, and I usually try, for this purpose, and cover it, but I added a whole new layer of water to the top, so it's going to cause everything to get heavier. You'll see it compact more because I added this water, but I didn't add so much water here that it's drenched. My material started out wet, I dry it, I wet it, I dry it, I wet it. That's how you keep from getting leachate into your bins. I run all of my bins in here with no leachate problems. I do that because I measure the water quantities, I check my water variances daily, and really it only takes a couple of minutes every day to just go, nope, that's still pretty dry. Let it sit one more day. I can still see water marks on the edges. It'll be okay. It's all a visual thing with this. It's, look, nope, I don't need to do anything. Look, oh, hey, it's been 2 days, add some water. You saw that once I dug that hard top layer off where the major bugs would feast, it was nice and moist. It locks in this layer of moisture down below. That's what you're trying to accomplish. The worms will come up here and they'll pull this excess material down into the pile as it's breaking down because they like the piece of bacteria on it, and so they just dove right through it and it took it down. That being said, this is pretty much the end of this mission. I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit more leaf layer on top and then cover it back up with cardboard. We'll get one more bin down, or actually 2 more bins down, and then it will be onto the big tubs. Okay, here we go. This is bin number 2. Go ahead and take that away. See, very dry. A lot of diatomaceous earth on here. So, go ahead and kind of keep it covered, but also work the materials back. Okay, now you can see here on top, still have a good amount of nice top dry material on here from the compost, but it's also nice and moist underneath. So, that being said, let's kind of see how we're looking here for digging down underneath. Definitely some worms in here, and there's my phone going off again. But also I found some of the coffee has still dried out. A little bit more paper I'm noticing at the bottom of this bin, but I'm also not finding anything left of the apple. Maybe that. Well, just a whole lot of worms and dry material. So, we'll do just like the last time and dig ourselves out a nice square. Make sure we examine our worms. So, definitely some very pretty active worms. In case you can't see, this big old guy, inching along. Or down here, we got a couple of little babies really getting a move on. Just saw this little sidewall twitch, so definitely some worms going. I don't know about you, but for me anyways, I definitely really like seeing the worms move. It kind of almost relaxing, like fishing or watching fish even in your aquarium. But I'm gonna go ahead and see, I found this kind of hard mushy, and this is what is left over of that coffee that I like to put in here. One of the best things about the coffee that I was getting is its size. It is already ground down to a very, very nice size, and then they press it into these nice coffee disc, I don't know. And usually, if you're looking in some of the coffee buckets that I got, you could definitely see where they had been stuck together. But this bin is a little bit more moist than the other one, so I'm going to put a layer of the dry coffee on top to start with, and then, as you can see, the banana has already unfrozen almost, at least this peel has, making it a little bit easier to kind of spread out the corners. Not quite completely unfrozen, but definitely getting there. And then I have, looks like a little piece of lettuce that got stuck here, but this is some very rotten but frozen celery. And this is a very uncommon thing that I would feed the worms. I'm more of a different materials kind of person. I really don't like celery. There's not a lot of benefits to it. It still does do a good job of adding a lot of moisture in here. And that's why I kind of have a unique process. And I'm using these frozen things, semi-defrosted, to feed the worms. Now this is a more fungal base, or sorry, bacteria based bin. Throw in one more piece of this banana peel so I have the rest to go. So I'm not going to really put a lot of these pieces of celery in here, but I want to make sure I have a lot. And then because I am more bacteria, I'm only going to put 2 little pieces of fungus just so I have a little bit of fungus base, and then I will give it the dry cover. That dry cover, put a layer of coffee to seal it in, so we kind of know where we can depend on our worms to be when we come back every time. I'm not saying that they will always be here, but they usually are right here feeding, and then when they get full, they go out here to the exterior and poop, and then they swim around much like a bunch of fish in the fishbowl, eating and pooping. I do occasionally spray the top layer of these, the leaves. I do occasionally spray it, but only enough to get some moisture down to the worms. You notice most of my material is very dry. Dryness is the key and will make your life much simpler. This is still a little bit too wet, more than I would like. So I'm not going to add any moisture here. I'm just going to cover up, give a nice swirl of material. I'll take this stuff, got all my diatomaceous earth coverings and a little bit of dry compost in it. I'm going to spread it out as evenly as possible over my newfound feeding field and everything. But I know I'm not going to have enough to cover, so much like the last bin, we will grab some leaves and recover. Now with all this recovering, you're providing more food, because this is a zone where the worms will come once you give it a nice little mist, like I'll show you here in a minute. Your worms can come up here and they will get a nice little bit of material that they will take back for digestion and breakdown. Also, we'll keep all these leaves out of your face later. So, there you have it. Simple, easy, and like I said, with just 2 of these, you could easily grow plenty of worms to supply your garden, you know, a couple of shelves. This is a lot of material. You can continue to reprocess and only take little bits at a time. Also, with bins like this, we won't have to deal with buckets for salvaging our material. We can just literally build a small divider with cardboard, whole cardboard, and we'll poke holes in it. And I'll go over this when it comes time, because I've only seen this done. I haven't actually done it yet. But we will make a horizontal feeding area where the worms will all travel over here, and as we work it, they will come and we will pull the material out to shift to the next bin, and then this bin would be salvaged for material. But for now, we will cover the tub back up and move on to the next one. Okay, and so here we go with the last of the tubs. Very crisp. Okay, so just like before, we will kind of dig back here and see still whole pine cones. I just kind of grab whatever is there and I leave it there, you know. If it doesn't make it through, it doesn't make it through. It's the next batch or the batch after that. Eventually, these guys will break it down and we'll have a nice good vermicast. But since we're already spotting a couple of worms right here, I'm going to say that there is some food here, considering there is an adult almost right on top. I'm pretty sure I saw another guy or girl right next to it. Depends on, I guess, what you would like to call them, considering they are hermaphrodites. But much like with all my other centralized feedings, we will just straight up dig. I'm definitely liking the moisture in this bin better. I've noticed it's a little bit more dry, but still, you know, workable. Some sprouts that were coming up but haven't quite died off yet. Oh wow, just mother load in here. Looks like everybody's still kind of busy working. But what I'm not seeing is anything to do with an apple. Definitely seeing that there's a lot more worms, namely adult worms, and they are definitely busy and not liking the light because they're scrounging for everything. Nope, it does not appear that we would have any food remains. Dig back just a little bit further in all the corners. But no, nothing. So, what we'll do is we will create a new food gully. That's what I like to call it, food gully. Give them a nice base of their own materials, whatever your bedding is. You know, everybody does everything different. You don't have to do it this way. This is just pre-composted matter because I don't like to mess around and wait for everything to happen all the time. So I speed up processes. I try and make it so their job is as easy, if not easier, than ours. We'll give them a nice healthy layer of the coffee. Make sure we grind up all the nice chunks of it the best we can. That's what makes being a worm farmer so easy. People will pay you money to take away their food waste. I don't. If you want, or if you're interested, you can look up on my Instagram and see that I use an app called ShareWaste to help try and find more materials so people don't have to send perfectly good things like this banana peel to the dump. I could give you a 5-gallon bucket and we could meet up once a month, once a week, whichever, and I'll take this food waste off your hand for free. The rest of this celery out of the way. Make sure we kind of spread it out. I don't want to get too much of a water concentration because that's what celery is a very heavy water source. But from what I'm seeing is this bin is very dry and definitely capable of undertaking it. You can see the celery, even though it's frozen, really comes apart like nothing. Make sure we get a nice healthy mix of fungus in here. This batch has a little hanger on it that tells me how much fungus material I'm putting in. And this is what I'm calling an even batch. Very, very much so great for both your front yard or maybe some bushes that are close to your grass that could leach out some of the good nutrients from in here over to your lawn. And that's what people are going to look for when it comes to a vermicast. Is it fungus strong? Is it bacteria strong? Or is it a good mix of both? So we'll make sure that these guys have a good source of food for the next month. Which is why keeping worms is actually a lot easier than keeping any other kind of pet or animal, because you can track them, you can watch how much they eat, and you don't have to service them like other animals. Now, they are by no means a pet of any type, but in comparison to a pet, if you can have a pet and manage your garden, you can definitely have time to run some worms. Now, I did put a lot of celery in here, but this is kind of the nitty-gritty down bottom barrel of my coffee grounds. So I want to make sure that I get all of these wet so they don't bunch back up. In the material. It's also going to be a nice allure to these worms if it has a nice water mixture to it already. Now, that looks a lot of wetness, doesn't it? But remember, we just put down a whole bunch of dryness underneath. And we'll come back over and just maneuver all of those worms. Now, what did happen here is when I took all these guys and I pushed them all over here, they dove down into this side. So when I put these back, I put these tubs back in a certain way, so I know which way to sweep my material, my dry top material, into that specific direction. So all of my worms will go to the opposite side and dive down. What you just did was efficiently, easily relocated and refluffed your bin without having to get actually down in here and do anything. Now, yeah, I'm breaking up some definitely dry sticks that I found in the mix. They're going to take a really long time, but the smaller the particles, the faster they will break down, and the easier your life will be. All of my material, as you can see, is in some way or shape or form been broken down. And I do that with a couple of different pieces of machinery that you can buy. I prefer to use electric ones because, well, yes, I am drawing power from a grid that is utilizing carbon-based fuels still. I would much rather deal with electrical problems than a gas problem any day, because gas motors require a lot more. The electrical motors, they have easy fixes. If your motor does burn out, you can usually take it to a shop, and there are places that can repair those electric motors. That's what I like about this. We're taking old stuff that most people pay to throw away, and we turn it into something very beneficial for your local environment, your yard, your garden. As you'll see if you ever visit the Instagram, or if you ever watch some of the other videos, you'll see that within months of adding fresh vermicast to a potted plant, you can see a major growth difference. If you add some wigglers and some vermicast into that plant, you're going to see that plant transform overnight. So that's the end of this tutorial. Maybe I'll have some extra footage of some of the other bins that I feed today.